Have you ever been in a room full of people yet felt completely somewhere else? Your body was there, but your mind was replaying a moment from yesterday or racing ahead to tomorrow. That's not weakness, that's biology. Your brain was designed to protect you, not to keep you present. It scans for danger, revisits old wounds, and rehearses future problems, often without your permission. And while it believes it's helping, it quietly steals your now. The mind says, what if? The heart says, be here. Most of us don't realize how often we live on autopilot. Reacting instead of responding, rushing instead of feeling, listening to reply rather than to understand. Presence disappears not in chaos, but in familiarity. Here's the truth. Peace doesn't come from controlling thoughts. It comes from noticing them. The moment you become aware of your breath, your body, your emotions, you interrupt the sabotage, you reclaim your power, you remind the brain that this moment is safe. Presence is where clarity lives. Presence is where connection begins. Presence is where your life actually happens. And the more you return to it, gently, consistently, the quieter the noise becomes. Not because your brain stops talking, but because you finally stop letting it run the show. The human brain was never designed to help you feel calm, present, or deeply connected to the moment you are living in right now. It was designed to keep you alive long before comfort, joy, or mindfulness ever mattered. Survival was the mission. Your brain learned to scan the environment for threats, remember pain so it could avoid it later, and imagine worst-case scenarios to stay one step ahead of danger. This ancient wiring still runs quietly in the background of your modern life, even when there is no real threat in front of you. While you are sitting safely in a room, your brain may be revisiting an argument from last week or worrying about something that has not even happened yet. It does this automatically, not because you are broken, but because your brain believes it is doing its job. Presence requires stillness, but the survival brain thrives on movement. It jumps from thought to thought, looking for problems to solve. It pulls your attention into the past by replaying mistakes, regrets, and painful memories, because remembering pain once helped humans avoid it again. It pushes your attention into the future by creating fear-based scenarios, because anticipating danger once increased the chances of survival. The problem is that most of today's fears are not life-threatening, yet the brain reacts as if they are. A difficult conversation, a delayed message, or uncertainty about the future can trigger the same mental alarms as real danger. In those moments, presence disappears. You may notice this when you are with people you love, but your mind is elsewhere. You may be listening, but not fully hearing. You may be smiling, but not fully feeling. This is not a failure of character. It is the survival brain staying busy. The brain does not ask whether a thought is useful, only whether it might be protective. That is why overthinking feels compulsive. It feels urgent. It feels hard to stop. The brain believes that if it keeps thinking, it can prevent pain. The human brain was never designed to help you feel calm, present, or deeply connected to the moment you are living in right now. It was designed to the cost of this constant mental activity is that you miss your life as it is happening. The warmth of a laugh, the meaning in a conversation, the quiet joy of being alive in a simple moment, all fade into the background while the brain runs its protective loops. Presence requires a sense of safety, and the survival brain rarely feels safe. It is always preparing for the next problem. Even in moments of success or happiness, it may whisper, what if this does not last, or what could go wrong next? Understanding this changes everything. When you realize that your lack of presence is not a personal flaw, you stop fighting yourself. You begin to observe the brain with compassion instead of frustration. You recognize that awareness is not about forcing the mind to be quiet, but about gently reminding it that right now, in this moment, you are okay. Each time you bring attention back to your breath, your body, or your surroundings, you send a signal of safety to the nervous system. Over time, the brain learns that it does not have to stay on high alert all the time. Presence is not natural to the survival brain. It is learned through awareness. It grows when you pause, when you notice, when you choose to return to now instead of being dragged by thought. The brain may still try to protect you, but you no longer let it control where you live. You begin to live here in this moment where life is actually happening. Overthinking is one of the most subtle ways the mind pulls you out of the present moment. And most people do not even realize it is happening. It often feels like responsibility, intelligence, or being prepared. But in reality, it is the brain repeating the same thoughts in an attempt to gain certainty. The mind believes that if it analyzes something long enough, it will eventually feel safe. Instead of experiencing what is happening now, attention is constantly redirected inward toward imagined problems, possible outcomes, and unresolved questions. In that process, the present moment quietly slips away. The brain does not overthink because the situation demands it, but because it dislikes uncertainty. The present moment is alive, unpredictable, and always changing. For the brain, this feels uncomfortable. It would rather live in thoughts where it can rehearse, judge, and control. When you are overthinking, you are not actually solving problems. You are postponing being present. You are trading real experience for mental noise. A conversation becomes a performance you analyze why is happening. A quiet moment becomes a space you rush to fill with thought. Even rest can feel uneasy because the mind does not know how to simply be. Overthinking pulls you into the past by replaying what you should have said, what you should have done, and how things might have turned out differently. It creates emotional reactions to memories that no longer exist, yet feel real in the body. At the same time, it drags you into the future by imagining scenarios that have not happened. You may notice your heart rate increase, your breathing change, or tension appear in your body, all in response to thoughts alone. The brain does not distinguish between a real threat and an imagined one. As long as the thought feels convincing, the body responds. Presence disappears when attention is trapped inside the mind. You may be physically still, yet mentally exhausted. You may be surrounded by life, but disconnected from it. Overthinking narrows your awareness. Instead of sensing the room, the sounds, or the people around you, you are locked in a private mental world. This is why time can feel like it is slipping by quickly. Days blur together, not because nothing happened, but because you were not fully there to receive them. Letting go of overthinking does not mean becoming careless or ignoring responsibilities. It means recognizing when thinking has stopped being useful. There is a difference between intentional thought and compulsive thought. Intentional thought has a beginning and an end. It serves a purpose. Compulsive thought loops endlessly and creates stress without clarity. Awareness is what breaks the cycle. The moment you notice that you are lost in thought, you are no longer completely lost. Presence returns through simple acts of attention. Feeling your feet on the ground, noticing your breath moving in and out, listening fully to someone without planning your response. These moments anchor you back into now. Each time you do this, you teach the brain that it does not need to solve everything immediately. You show it that being here is safe. Over time, the grip of overthinking loosens. Thoughts still come, but they no longer pull you away so easily. You begin to experience life directly, rather than through the filter of constant analysis. In that space, clarity replaces confusion, calm replaces urgency, and the present moment becomes something you can finally inhabit, instead of something you keep missing. The human mind has a powerful habit of traveling through time, even when the body remains perfectly still. One moment, attention is pulled backward into memories of what went wrong, what was lost, or what should have been different. the next moment. It is pushed forward into fears about what might happen, what could fail, or what may never arrive. This constant movement between past and future feels natural, yet it quietly hijacks attention and removes you from the only place where life actually exists, the present moment. Regret has a way of disguising itself as reflection. The mind replays old conversations, missed chances, and painful decisions, believing that if it analyzes them enough, it can finally find peace. Instead, each replay strengthens emotional patterns that no longer serve you. The past cannot be corrected, yet the brain treats it as unfinished business. Old emotions resurface as if the event is happening again. The body responds with heaviness, tension, or sadness, even though the moment has already passed. In this way, the mind keeps you emotionally anchored to a time that no longer exists. Future fear works in a similar way, but with a different emotional charge. The mind projects itself forward, creating images of loss, failure, or rejection. These imagined futures feel urgent and real. The brain does not wait for evidence. It prepares for danger before danger appears. This preparation often feels like worry, planning, or anxiety, but underneath it is the same survival mechanism trying to stay in control. While the mind is busy protecting you from what might happen, it pulls your awareness away from what is happening. Both regret and fear give the illusion of usefulness. Regret says, learn from this so it never happens again. Fear says, stay alert so you are not caught off guard. Yet, when these thoughts dominate attention, they prevent learning and awareness in the present. You cannot fully listen, connect, or respond wisely when your mind is elsewhere. You may notice that even peaceful moments feel incomplete because part of you is still carrying yesterday or chasing tomorrow. This mental time travel becomes exhausting. You may feel tired without knowing why, restless without understanding the cause, or disconnected even when surrounded by people. Attention is fragmented, split between moments that are not real anymore or not real yet. Presence requires wholeness, but the mind keeps pulling you apart. The more you identify with regret and fear, the more your sense of self becomes tied to stories instead of experience. The truth is that the present moment rarely contains the danger the mind imagines. Right now, in most moments, you are breathing, supported, and alive. When attention returns to the body, the senses, and the immediate environment, something shifts. The nervous system begins to settle. The brain receives new information, not from thought, but from direct experience. It learns that safety can exist without constant vigilance. Releasing the grip of past and future does not mean forgetting lessons or ignoring responsibilities. It means choosing not to live inside mental replay. Lessons can be remembered briefly and consciously. Plans can be made and then released. Presence begins when you stop feeding thoughts that no longer need attention. Awareness interrupts the habit. Each time you notice that your mind has drifted into regret or fear and gently return to now, you weaken the pattern. Over time, attention becomes less hijacked. The past loses its emotional charge. The future loses its urgency. You begin to experience moments as they are, not as reflections of what was or predictions of what might be. In that space, life feels fuller, richer, and more grounded. You are no longer pulled away by memories or worries. You are finally here where your power, clarity, and peace have always been waiting. Most of what shapes your daily reactions happens beneath your conscious awareness. Long before you decide how to respond, your brain has already chosen a familiar path. This is emotional autopilot. It is the collection of learned responses, habits, and emotional patterns formed through past experiences. Once activated, it runs automatically without asking whether the situation truly requires it. You may feel irritated, defensive, or withdrawn before you even understand why. In those moments, presence disappears because you are reacting from memory rather than responding to reality. Emotional autopilot is created through repetition. When certain experiences trigger strong emotions, the brain stores them as shortcuts. Similar situations later activate the same emotional response, even if the context has changed. A tone of voice may remind you of past criticism. A delay may echo a feeling of abandonment. A challenge may awaken an old fear of failure. The brain responds quickly that trying to protect you from pain it remembers. It does not pause to check if the threat is real. It simply reacts. This is why some reactions feel bigger than the moment deserves. The intensity does not belong to the present situation alone. It carries emotional history. When autopilot is running, the present moment becomes distorted. You may misinterpret intentions, assume meaning that is not there, or close yourself off emotionally. Presence requires awareness, but autopilot thrives on unconsciousness. The less aware you are, the stronger these patterns become. Many people live most of their lives this way. Conversations repeat. Conflicts follow familiar scripts. Emotional responses feel predictable, yet uncontrollable. The brain prefers what is familiar, even if it is uncomfortable. Familiar pain feels safer than unknown peace. So autopilot keeps you locked into reactions you have outgrown. It convinces you that this is just how you are, when in truth it is simply how you learn to cope. Breaking free begins with noticing. The moment you become aware of a reaction is as it is happening, you create space. You may feel anger rise, but you pause before speaking. You may feel fear tighten your chest, but you stay present with it. This pause interrupts autopilot. It allows choice to return. Instead of reacting from the past, you respond from now. The body plays a crucial role in this awareness. Emotional autopilot lives in physical sensations as much as in thoughts. Tight shoulders, shallow breathing, or a clenched jaw are signals that an old pattern has been activated. When you bring attention to the body, you ground yourself in the present moment. You remind the nervous system that it is safe to slow down. With practice, presence becomes stronger than habit. Emotional reactions still arise, but they no longer control you. You begin to recognize that feelings are information, not commands. You listen without immediately defending. You respond without repeating old stories. Over time, new patterns form. The brain learns that awareness is safer than automatic reaction. Presence transforms relationships, decisions, and self-trust. When you are no longer ruled by autopilot, life feels less reactive and more intentional. You are no longer living from old wounds. You are living from awareness. And in that awareness, you finally experience the freedom to choose who you are in each moment instead of letting the past decide for you. Awareness is the moment when light enters the automatic patterns of the mind. Without awareness, thoughts, emotions, and reactions move freely, shaping your experience without your consent. You may believe you are making choices, yet most of the time you are following unconscious habits formed long ago. Awareness changes this. It does not fight the mind or try to control it. It simply observes. And in that observation, something powerful happens. You step out of identification with thought and begin to experience life more clearly. The first step toward reclaiming presence is noticing where your attention is. Many people live almost entirely inside their thoughts, rarely aware that they are thinking. The moment you realize that your mind has wandered into worry, judgment, or replay, you are no longer fully lost in it. Awareness creates distance. Instead of being the thought, you become the one who notices the thought. This shift may seem small, but it is profound. It is the doorway back to the present moment. Awareness also brings honesty. It allows you to see how often you avoid the present by distracting yourself. You may notice the urge to check your phone, fill silence, or stay busy. These habits are not random. They are ways the mind avoids discomfort. Awareness does not judge these tendencies. It simply reveals them. When something is seen clearly, it begins to lose its power. As awareness deepens, you begin to notice the body. Sensations that were once ignored become signals. Tightness, restlessness, or heaviness offer information about your inner state. The body always lives in the present moment. By bringing attention to physical sensation, you anchor awareness in now. This grounding helps calm the nervous system and supports presence without effort. Awareness also changes your relationship with emotion. Instead of reacting immediately, you begin to observe emotions as they arise. You notice their shape, their intensity, and how they move through the body. This observation creates space. Emotions are no longer something you must act on. They become experiences you can allow. In that allowance, emotional intensity often softens. Reclaiming presence is not about eliminating distraction or achieving constant calm. It is about returning again and again. Each moment of awareness strengthens your ability to stay present. Even noticing that you were absent is a form of presence. There is no failure in this practice, only learning. Over time, awareness becomes more natural. You respond instead of react. You listen more fully. You feel more connected to yourself and others. Life slows down not because time changes, but because you are finally here to experience it. Awareness brings you back to the truth of this moment, and in that moment, you discover that presence was never missing. It was simply waiting for you to notice. Stillness is not the absence of movement, it is the presence of safety. When the body slows down, the brain begins to receive a powerful message that nothing needs to be fixed right now. The nervous system, which has been trained to stay alert, finally gets permission to rest. Most people avoid stillness because it feels unfamiliar. In silence, the mind initially becomes louder. Thoughts rush in, emotions surface, and discomfort appears. This is not a failure of stillness. It is a sign that the mind has been running for a long time. The brain learns through repetition. When life feels rushed, chaotic, or emotionally intense, the brain associates movement with survival. It believes that staying busy keeps danger away. Stillness challenges that belief. Each moment you choose to pause, breathe, and remain present, you gently retrain the brain. You show it that nothing bad happens when you slow down. Over time, the brain begins to update its understanding of safety. Stillness does not require perfect conditions. It can exist in small moments, a pause before speaking, a deep breath while waiting, a few seconds of awareness before reacting. These moments may seem insignificant, yet they are powerful. They interrupt the stress response and allow the body to regulate itself. The heart rate slows, breathing deepens, and muscles soften. The body sends feedback to the brain that the present moment is safe. Many people confuse stillness with passivity, but it is actually an active form of awareness. You are not shutting down, you are tuning in. You notice sensations, emotions, and thoughts without needing to change them. This non-resistance is what calms the nervous system. The brain no longer has to fight or flee. It can simply observe. As stillness becomes familiar, presence grows stronger. You begin to feel more grounded in your body. The constant urge to distract yourself weakens. Silence becomes less threatening. You may notice that your reactions soften. Situations that once triggered anxiety or impatience now feel more manageable. This is not because life has changed, but because your internal state has. Stillness also builds trust within yourself. Each time you remain present with discomfort without escaping it, you prove to the brain that you are capable of handling experience as it unfolds. This confidence reduces fear. The mind learns that it does not need to constantly prepare for the worst. It can rest in what is. With practice, stillness becomes a refuge. It is a place you can return to when the world feels overwhelming. The brain, once trained to scan for danger, begins to recognize calm as normal. Presence no longer feels fragile. It becomes steady, accessible, and supportive. Stillness is not about stopping life. It is about meeting life without resistance. In that meeting, the brain finally learns what, say, safety feels like in the present moment. In the end, presence is not something you have to earn or create. It is something you remember. Beneath the noise of thought, the pull of the past, the fear of the future, and the habits of emotional autopilot, there is a quiet awareness that has always been here. Your brain may continue to do what it was designed to do: protect, predict, and prepare, but you are no longer required to live inside those patterns. Each moment of awareness, each pause into stillness, gently returns you to yourself. You begin to understand that your mind is not the enemy. It is simply outdated in its methods. When you meet it with compassion instead of resistance, it loosens its grip. Presence grows not through force, but through kindness, curiosity, and practice. You learn to notice without judgment, to feel without fleeing, and to respond instead of react. This is where your life truly opens. When you are present, you listen more deeply, connect more honestly, and experience moments more fully. The ordinary becomes meaningful. The now becomes enough. You stop waiting for life to begin and realize it has been happening all along. Presence is not perfection. It is returning again and again to this breath, to this body, this moment. And in that return, you reclaim your power, your peace, and the simple truth that nothing is missing here.